You're
It'll be
gonna
like
be
ZZ Top.
David Letterman.
It'll be like ZZ Top by the time it's all done.
All right, go live now. There you go.
All right, here we are.
I'll share this in a moment. How are you doing? Welcome to our home. I'm Brant Parsons. This is Matt Murschel. It's College Football Now, where we talk about the latest that is going on in the college football world. And, you know, everybody's been telling me it's early. Don't worry about it. It's just one poll. And I'm not talking about the election. I'm talking about the college football playoff poll that came out last night. It made sense through the first three, and then a little bit of a curveball thrown in. Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, 1 through 3. Nothing shocking there. Everybody was expecting to hear Washington in that first four. It was Texas A&M. I would love to go on this rant about how terrible it is, but I know they won't end up there. But why Texas A&M at 4, and why should we not be freaking out about Texas A&M being at 4?
Well, the reason we shouldn't be freaking out is because, it's, as you mentioned, it's the first poll of the season. Also because of the fact that conference championships really matter to the selection committee when it comes down to it. So all this will change definitely by the time we get to the end of the season, and once the conference championship games are out there as well, because you won't see a Texas A&M probably in that mix. You will see maybe a chance to see a Washington, or you'll see someone else find their way up to the top. Yeah, it was a surprise. I mean, I don't think anyone would have thought that an undefeated team would get leapfrogged by a one-loss team, but talking with the selection committee chairman, Kirby Hocutt, last night, he said, listen, Texas A&M had a better schedule. They've got better wins. Their only loss was to the top team in the country in Alabama. And Washington really only has 2 wins over teams with a 500 or better record, winning record. So that's why it kind of ended up being where it was at. To me, that wasn't as much of a surprise as some of the teams later on down the road when we saw an Auburn at 9 and a Penn State at number 12. Those 2 teams were the ones that left me scratching my head before the end of the night.
When I saw Auburn at 9, I instantly said it was rigged. There's a bias. It's an SEC bias. But watch as the season plays out, if Washington wins the rest of their games, they're going to leap over A&M, right? Assuming,
yes.
I mean, now granted, if Alabama loses and A&M finds its way into an SEC title game, but if the top 3 teams win out, Washington as a Pac-12 champ, you see them, they would jump over A&M into that spot.
Oh, for sure. I mean, listen, having gone through the mock selection committee, you know, a couple weeks ago, one thing that there was for sure brought up was the fact that, you know, conference championships matter. So when you're looking at that, they're not going to leave out a conference champion of a Power 5 school for a one-loss, you know, Alabama, or one-loss, you know, Texas A&M. I just don't see that happening because, again, I mean, they call it the 13th data point. They need to have that game, you know, that championship game. I think will help them out in the end. That's why I just don't think this is going to happen. Plus the fact, if you look at Texas A&M's remaining 4 games, 2 of those are against teams that don't have a winning record. So everyone else is stacked up perfectly. They've got lots of good opponents moving on. Texas A&M really doesn't. I mean, their biggest challenges, if you can believe this, are UTSA and LSU. Those are the only 2 winning teams left on their schedule. So eventually, you know, they're going to have to, I think in the next couple weeks. In fact, next week's poll, I don't see, you know, depending on what happens, I can't imagine that Texas A&M still remains at number 4.
Assuming the teams win out in the top 5. So we'll keep an eye on that as it goes on throughout the season. That's where it stands now. Just for reference, Florida at number 11 and Florida State 22. 2 local teams in the
and I think some other issue, you know, if you're looking at some of these teams, the group of 5, obviously, which affects people, schools like UCF. Western Michigan, the MAC, looking like with the team possibly right now, if they win out and win their championship, will get into the New Year's 6 game, which is, you know, parade for the MAC, right? You know, and the Broncos. PJ Fleck, probably possibility. Boise State at 24, the other one that could probably get in.
Western Michigan put a hurting on Ball State last night. In case you weren't watching the baseball game or anything else, that was.
My Cardinals didn't do the job. Didn't do any justice last night.
All right, time for us to make our picks for the week, and for the second straight week, Matt, you got a lot right, and I got a lot wrong. You're 8-1, I was 4-5, so don't even listen to my picks.
Let's just make sure we get that on tape, everyone. I want to know so we can.
You're now 4 games up on the season on me for picking these correct. We're going to start local. I actually have the wrong name on my thing here, but Tulane visits UCF on Saturday. This is the postponed game from Hurricane Matthew. Tulane comes in 0-4 in conference play, but they do have a top 20 rushing offense in the country. UCF has a pretty decent rushing defense themselves. Dontrell Hilliard is the leader for Tulane. He averages 80 yards a game. He has 8 touchdowns. That's one of the guys they're going to need to stop. UCF comes into this game, Matt, second time in 3 weeks, blowing a big lead this time at Houston. They're up 24-3 before losing that game. And we've seen two sides of UCF here. We've seen a young team that is talented and obviously can compete in the American, and then you've seen a young team that's not quite there, are not able to close games out and get the win when they have the lead, and they fell apart against Houston. But I am taking the Knights in this one. The Hurricane Matthew makeup game, UCF gets the win.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think UCF wins this game. I mean, listen, it's been pretty simple the last couple of weeks for UCF. They haven't been able to run the football, and this really is what Scott Frost wants his offense to do. He wants it to be balanced. He wants to have the running attack. He wants to have the passing attack as well. Mackenzie Milton can't stand back in the pocket and throw the ball 40 times. He's a great passer, but he's not that kind of quarterback. And we saw what happened is that offensive line hasn't been able to protect him. UCF next to last, giving up the most sacks, 24 so far. But I think, you look at what Tulane comes in being able to do. They're last in the American in total offense. I don't see this being, I think UCF's defense can do a better job, as you mentioned. And as you mentioned, it's a young team. They're going to grow into be able to close out games. This is something that Scott Frost knows his team and his players will eventually learn how to do, because they had 2 golden opportunities. Imagine they win those 2 games. They're already bowl eligible, and they've got a chance maybe to continue to move up the order. This is kind of what I expected out of this UCF team a little bit. I expected them to struggle at these kind of games, and it's where they're really at right now.
Yep. All right. A team that just keeps winning, and I got to tell you, even Gator fans are telling me it's ugly. But the number 10 Gators visit Arkansas on Saturday at 3:30. They've played 10 times. The only time Arkansas has ever beaten Florida was the 1982 Bluebonnet Bowl.
Oh, the Bluebonnet Bowl.
Boy, I missed the Bluebonnet Bowl.
I can't believe it's not Butter Bowl or whatever.
All these bowl games. Can we just bring back the Bluebonnet Bowl?
I like the Weed Eater Bowl. Weed Eater was always a good one.
I like the Bluebonnet, but that's the only time Arkansas has ever beat Florida since they've been in the SEC. Florida has obviously dominated Arkansas. UF comes into this game. They lead the SEC in passing defense, pass efficiency defense, total defense, scoring defense, and it shows. Their defense is why Florida keeps winning. Eventually, one of these times, it is going to catch up with them because the offense is still trying to find itself. But that defense is so tough. This game will be key. It's Austin Allen, Raleigh Williams, 3. That's the 1-2 punch that Arkansas has. Allen's averaging over 250 yards passing in the game, and Williams averages over 100 yards on the ground. You have to think that the Gators will be able to stop them, but that is the focal point of Arkansas. You stop those 2 guys, and you shut them down, and I think Florida will do that. They've got tougher tests on the way. This could be tougher than maybe people realize. It's on the road, but I have the Gators and another snooze fest beating Arkansas and continuing their winning ways.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, folks. Florida's offense isn't going to win any beauty pageants, to be honest with you. I would rate them at a 3, to be honest with you. But you look at what the Gators have been able to do.
Thanks, Mr. Trump.
And if you're really going to go that way, I mean, look at what they've just struggled. Consistency, to be honest with you. That's where I think they're having problems. Their consistency in offense when it comes to their quarterback. I think their running attack has had some issues. They've had some players in and out, when able to get that going as well. But their defense has been outstanding. It's been lights out. And I think that's going to be the big factor here. Austin Allen, the Arkansas quarterback, has done a good job, but his offensive line hasn't done him any favors to protect him. I think that's where the Gators are going to take advantage of. They're going to try to get to him as well. Fun fact that I was looking up when I was doing the story, the Gators are 14-0 under Jim McElwain as favorites, as the odds-on favorites. So I'm taking the Gators. I think the Gators are going to win this. They're favored by 5 going into this game.
And they continue that romp to the SEC East title. Kentucky in second place.
Yes.
Kentucky needs 4 to lose 2 games and win out. Just how crazy is that Kentucky is the team that could finish second in the East. Before we get to Florida State, NC State, it's time for trivia time. Florida State has been in the AP Top 25 poll 79 consecutive weeks, Matt. If they lose this week, they won't be. It is the second longest streak, but there are only 6 schools that have been in the top 25 consecutively just beyond this season we're currently in. You want to try and name a couple of them?
Alabama.
That's your number 1. They've been in
Oklahoma.
141 weeks, not Oklahoma.
Oh, Ohio State.
Ohio State, 3.
Wow, it's going to be good. Clemson.
Clemson, 2 left.
2 left. Notre Dame.
Nope,
Oh.
they're out. Big 12, Big 10.
Big 12, Big 10. Michigan State.
Nope, other side of the state.
Michigan.
There you go.
And UCLA.
And Baylor. Big
Baylor.
12.
Oh, Big 12. Sorry.
Alabama number 1, Florida State 2, Ohio State 3, Baylor, Clemson, Michigan. Those are the only 6 schools that have been in the top 25 going back to last year, still in it now. Michigan 22 consecutive weeks. Alabama 141 consecutive weeks in the top 25. But the reason I bring that up is Florida State has 3 losses in the ACC. They still don't know how to block and protect their quarterback, DeAndre Francois. If they could have blocked at all, they may have beaten Clemson this past weekend. They head to NC State on Saturday. One thing, even with them not being able to pass protect, they can run protect. Dalvin Cook, he's only 192 yards short of becoming the career rushing leader at Florida State. That would break Warwick Dunn's record. NC State, not a team you would expect to knock off Florida State. They come into this game, they're on a 3-game losing streak. They lost to Boston College last weekend. But this, to me, looking at this game, and I'm picking Florida State, but they need to be able to pick the pieces up. They're not going to play for an ACC title. They're not going to be in any mix of discussion. They're likely a mid-tier ACC bowl now, and you got to go on the road against an NC State team that there's not going to be much excitement on that end, and being able to pick themselves up after another disappointing loss. I think they will, and I think Dalvin Cook is the reason. But Florida State, long term, they've got to figure out an offensive line issue solution, because that's a bad issue, and it keeps haunting them.
Yeah, I mean, DeAndre Francois, I was at the Clemson game Saturday. I mean, the beating that he took in that game was unbelievable. And I mean, I know it upset Jimbo Fisher afterwards, caused that infamous rant now where he went off on the officials. But I mean, again, that, you know, if you want to go off on someone, go off on your offensive line, because they're not protecting him. And Francois has taken punishment unlike I've seen any quarterback in quite some time take it. And he's been able to get up and you know, respond to it. But again, I think for me, if I'm Florida State, yes, you can't play for an ACC title. Yes, you're playing for a mid-tier bowl game. But from Florida State, focus on some of the positives moving forward. Dalvin Cook, Dalvin Cook only carried the ball 19 times against Clemson. That's unbelievable. He should have carried at least 30. Cook should be getting the ball a lot more in this offense. I mean, he's obviously been able to benefit from that as well. Take the pressure away from DeAndre Francois, because, again, too long for him in the pocket, holding on the ball way too long, and I think that's some of the reasons they're doing it. They're going to beat NC State, though. I think they bounce back from that disappointing loss to Clemson.
169 yards for Cook, school record 4 touchdowns rushing. The one long play that was called back on the one that made Jimbo Fisher lose a gasket. Why wasn't he touching the ball more? He was the only guy that was making big plays for Florida State. He should have touched the ball more against Clemson.
I don't know if it's because Jimbo wants to create more balance in the offense, but I think everyone I spoke with after that game said, why isn't Dalvin Cook getting the ball more? Why isn't he getting more opportunities? It's not an issue of health. It's not an issue of ability. Dalvin Cook could carry the ball 30 times a game. I know that's maybe not what Jimbo wants his offense to be, but at this point, I think you almost have to do that a little bit. Take a little pressure off your young quarterback and allow him not to get hit so much, because I think we saw in that game, he sat back there and his receivers were finally getting open. He would wait till the very last second to throw the ball and then get crushed by a defender. That's not going to keep your quarterback healthy for very long.
Pittsburgh at Miami, 12:30 on Saturday. Miami is 9-1 their last 10 meetings with the Panthers, but they've lost 4 straight games after falling short in their comeback against Notre Dame. Panthers' 3 losses have been by a combined 11 points, and they're all 2 teams currently in the top 25. Pitt's averaging 38.1 points per game. Hurricanes, they keep people from scoring. That's where this game will be determined. They have held 6 of their 8 opponents to 21 points or less this season, and there's going to be a graphic that's going to show up around there. It's going to say, I'm picking Miami, but I changed my pick on this.
You changed your pick?
I've changed it. I've flip-flopped. I've reversed it, but I'm starting looking at Pitt and realizing this is a good Pitt team. And Miami, they have found a variety of ways to lose. They've come from behind and not rallied to win. They've had leads that they couldn't hold on to. They've looked good. They've looked bad. It's becoming an issue for them. I think they're going to lose their 5th straight game. This will be at home. I think Pitt, James O'Connor, they'll go in there. They will be able to get enough points against Miami's offense, which seems to have lost its way. Great running backs, but they forget to use them sometimes. So I think Pitt beats Miami.
Yeah,
even
I mean,
if it says otherwise.
I think Pittsburgh is a good team. I think Pat Narduzzi's done a good job. I think Miami bounces back finally this week. I mean, again, like you mentioned, I think what's really hampered them the last 4 games has been the fact that they've had so many injuries on the defensive side of the football. They haven't been able to get a full cavalcade of players in there to kind of take care of the football. And then you mentioned with the running backs. I mean, they got away from the running game at some point during this stretch. I don't know if it's because the offensive line hasn't been able to do the job to make their blocks and to get guys up and down the field, or if it's because Mark Richt and Brad Kaya feel like they can get the ball down the field and score more points because they've been behind. I think they'll bounce back. I think the attack will be better. This is going to be a close game no matter what. I think playing at home will help them out as well.
There's 2 games this weekend involving top 15 teams in